We need to let you go. 5 words that crashed into my life like a wrecking ball through a glass house. I sat across from Martin Henderson, CEO of Henderson Financial Partners, as he delivered the news with practiced corporate detachment. His office felt suddenly airless, the mahogany desk between us stretching into an uncrossable chasm. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. After 15 years, my voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. I just brought in the Miller account last week. Martin's eyes flickered down to the papers in front of him, refusing to meet mine. Restructuring, Diana. Nothing personal. Companies moving in a different direction. Different direction. The irony of those words would haunt me for months to come. I walked out of that skyscraper with a cardboard box and a severance package that wouldn't cover 3 months of our mortgage. The drive home felt surreal, my mind racing between panic and disbelief. Robert and I had built our lives around the stability of my position as senior financial advisor. With his fledgling architecture business still struggling to gain traction, my income had been our lifeline. Robert, I needed to tell him. The thought tightened my chest as I pulled into our driveway. Our colonial-style house stood silent in the afternoon sun, a monument to the life we'd been building for 12 years. Pictures of our honeymoon in Bali still hung in the entryway. The living room still held the antique coffee table we'd found at that estate sale in Vermont. Everything looked exactly the same, and yet nothing was. "Robert?" I called out, setting my box down on the kitchen counter. No answer. His car wasn't in the garage, but that wasn't unusual. He often worked late at his small downtown studio, pursuing his dream of establishing his own architecture firm. I admired his passion, his refusal to give up even when projects fell through. For years, I'd supported us financially so he could build something of his own. I should call him, I thought, but something made me hesitate. Instead, I sank into our sofa, mind whirling with calculations. Our savings would buy us time, but not much. The mortgage, car payments, Robert's business loans, my student debt that still lingered, it all hung over me like a guillotine blade. Needing to ground myself, I opened my laptop to check our accounts. If I moved some money around, maybe liquidated some investments, we could stretch things until I found another position. The screen loaded, and I stared at the numbers in disbelief. Our joint savings account, $212.47. Our emergency fund, 0.000 investment. Portfolio. Account closed. My hands trembled as I clicked through every account, hoping for some technical glitch, some mistake. But the truth glared back at me from the screen, unmistakable and devastating. Nearly $400,000. Gone. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. "The number you have reached is not in service. Please check the number and dial." Again. Robert's phone was disconnected. Panic rising, I called his office. "I'm sorry, Ms. Mitchell, but Robert hasn't been in for a few days. Said he had a family emergency?" His assistant's voice carried a note of confusion. Family emergency? We had no family emergencies. My parents were on a cruise in the Mediterranean. His mother was at her book club today. I'd spoken with her just yesterday. "When did you last see him?" I managed to ask. "Monday, I think? He packed up some of his designs, said he'd be working remotely." Monday, 3 days ago, the same day the accounts had been emptied. Dizzy with shock, I stumbled upstairs to our bedroom. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe he'd been in an accident. Maybe he'd made a large investment without telling me. He'd done impulsive things before. The closet. Door stood partially open. Robert's side, half empty. His favorite suits gone. His leather weekend bag, gone. His passport. With trembling fingers, I opened the small safe we kept in our closet. Empty, except for a single folded note. "Diana, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I can't do this anymore. pretending to be someone I'm not, living a life that's suffocating me. Claudia makes me feel alive in ways you never could. Don't try to find me. I've taken what I need to start over. You were always the stronger one anyway. I'm sorry. Our Claudia. The name hit me like a physical blow. Robert's newest client. The one with the beach house renovation in the Hamptons. The one he'd been spending so many late nights working with. The one whose Instagram feed was filled with exotic beaches and luxury resorts. My legs gave out, and I slid to the floor, the note crumpling in my fist. 12 years of marriage, 15 years at Henderson Financial. Both gone in a single day. The next weeks passed in a blur of police reports, bank investigations, and lawyer consultations. The verdict was always the same. Yes, what Robert did was illegal, liquidating our joint assets without consent. But tracking him down would be complicated. International financial crimes were difficult to prosecute. The money had been wired through a series of offshore accounts, eventually disappearing somewhere in the Maldives. The Maldives. Where Claudia had posted a sunset photo, just yesterday, a man's arm visible at the edge of the frame. "Start new beginnings," her caption read. "You should file for divorce immediately," my lawyer advised. "We can cite abandonment and financial fraud." I nodded numbly, signing where indicated. The paperwork felt meaningless. What was left to divide? Robert had taken everything but the house, which was now 3 months behind on payments. His business had been struggling worse than I'd realized. He'd taken out loans I knew nothing about, using our home as collateral. My phone buzzed with another email rejection. That made 17 job applications, 17 variations of, "We've decided to pursue other candidates." The financial sector had tightened, and without a recommendation from Henderson, who'd marked my file with that dreaded corporate euphemism, "not eligible for rehire," doors kept closing. The irony wasn't lost on me. After 15 years of managing millions for elite clients, I couldn't manage my way out of impending homelessness. I was sorting through bills at the kitchen table, deciding which were essential and which could wait, when the doorbell rang. Probably another notice from the bank. I considered ignoring it, but habit propelled me to the door. A courier stood on my porch, holding an envelope. "Diana Mitchell?" "Yes." My voice sounded hoarse from disuse. "Package for you. Needs a signature?" Scribbled something unrecognizable and took the envelope. Thick and heavy with official-looking letterhead, Blackwood and Associates, attorneys at law. Back at the kitchen table, I tore it open, expecting more bad news. Another creditor, perhaps, or something related to the divorce proceedings. Inside was a letter and several legal documents. "Dear Ms. Mitchell, we regret to inform you of the passing of Ms. Eleanor Blackwood on September 3rd. As the executor of her estate, I am instructed to contact you regarding her final wishes and bequests. Ms. Blackwood has named you as the primary beneficiary of her estate, including substantial financial holdings, real estate properties, and her controlling interest in Blackwood Investments Group. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to begin the transfer process. Sincerely, James Harrington, Esker Eleanor Blackwood." The name struck a distant chord in my memory. Eleanor had been my first client at Henderson Financial 15 years ago. A shrewd, no-nonsense woman in her 70s who'd built a small family business into a regional powerhouse. I'd managed her portfolio until she moved her accounts to a private family office about 5 years ago. But beneficiary? Controlling? Interest? There had to be some mistake. I called the number on the letterhead immediately. "Ms. Mitchell, thank you for your prompt response." James Harrington's voice was crisp and professional. "I understand this must come as a surprise." "A surprise?" "Mr. Harrington, there has to be some mistake. I haven't spoken to Eleanor in years." "No mistake. Ms. Blackwood was quite explicit in her will. She mentioned that you were the only financial advisor who ever told her the truth, even when it cost you personally. She valued that integrity above all else. I remembered the incident he was referring to. Eleanor had wanted to invest heavily in a promising startup that Henderson had a stake in. After researching the company thoroughly, I'd advised against it, showing her the red flags in their financial statements. Martin had been furious. The commission would have been substantial. But Eleanor had listened to me. 6 months later, the startup collapsed amid accounting scandals. The bequest includes $4.7 million in liquid assets, her primary residence in Greenwich, a vacation property in the Berkshires, and her 51% controlling interest in Blackwood Investments Group, Harrington continued. The company is currently valued at approximately $78 million. The room seemed to tilt. "That's not possible," I whispered. "I assure you it is. Ms. Blackwood had no children, and her extended family is well provided for through other means. She was quite determined that her legacy business be entrusted to someone with both financial acumen and moral integrity." Moral integrity. The phrase echoed in my mind as I thought of Robert, of Henderson, of all the betrayals large and small. "There's one more thing," Harrington added. "A personal letter that Ms. Blackwood instructed be delivered to you along with the notification." I opened the sealed envelope with trembling fingers. "Diana, if you're reading this, I've finally run out of time. Don't waste yours on mourning. I've had a good long run. You're wondering why you—" The answer is simple. In 40 years of business, you were the only person who put my interests above your own. You cost yourself a commission to save me from a bad investment. That kind of integrity is rare. I've watched your career from afar. Henderson never deserved you. Those fools wouldn't recognize true talent if it slapped them across their overpriced ties. My company needs someone who understands that business is about more than quarterly profits. It's about building something that lasts. Something honest. Don't waste this opportunity. Don't be afraid to settle some scores along the way. Business is business, after all. With respect and confidence, Eleanor Blackwood P.S. My lawyers will handle the technical details, but your first board meeting is scheduled for next month. Show them what you're made of. I read the letter 3 times, Eleanor's blunt voice echoing in my head. The same voice that had once told me, "Diana, in this business, men will take credit for your ideas, steal your clients, and expect you to serve them coffee while they do it. Make them regret underestimating you." I hadn't understood the full weight of her words then. I did now. 3 days later, I walked into the Blackwood Investments building in downtown Boston. The security guard checked my ID, his eyes widening slightly. "Ms. Mitchell, we've been expecting you. Mr. Harrington is waiting in the executive suite." The elevator rose smoothly to the top floor. I adjusted my suit jacket, the same one I'd worn to countless meetings at Henderson, now carrying a different significance. My heels clicked against marble floors as I followed the receptionist through glass doors etched with the Blackwood logo. James Harrington rose from a leather chair, extending his hand. "Ms. Mitchell, welcome to Blackwood Investments." "Thank you." "Mr. Harrington." The board is assembled in the conference room. They're eager to meet Eleanor's chosen successor. His tone carried a hint of amusement. "They've been speculating for weeks." I imagine they have. The conference room fell silent as I entered. 8 people, 6 men and 2 women, all impeccably dressed, all watching me with varying degrees of curiosity and wariness. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harrington announced, "may I present Diana Mitchell, the new majority shareholder and chairperson of Blackwood Investments Group, as designated by the late Eleanor Blackwood." I could read the thoughts flickering across their faces. Who is this woman? Why her? What does this mean for us? I took my seat at the head of the table, setting down the folder containing Eleanor's letter and the company's most recent financial statements, which I'd spent the last 3 nights studying. "Good morning," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I understand you have questions. We'll get to those. But first, I'd like to discuss the Henderson financial account." A middle-aged man halfway down the table, Timothy Wells, according to the seating chart, cleared his throat. Henderson Financial? They're not a current client. No, but they've approached Blackwood 3 times in the last year seeking investment capital for their expansion into Asian markets. I opened my folder. Their latest proposal came in last month. I believe the board was considering it. Uncomfortable glances circled the table. Yes, Wells finally admitted. They've presented some compelling numbers. I'm sure they have. I worked at Henderson for 15 years. I know exactly how they manipulate those numbers. I slid copies of my analysis around the table. Their Asian venture is built on quicksand. Their projections ignore regional regulatory changes coming next quarter, and their operational model is dangerously over-leveraged. The board members flipped through my detailed breakdown, expressions shifting from skepticism to concern. Furthermore, I continued. Henderson has a pattern of discarding loyal employees to improve their bottom line, often just before those employees would qualify for certain benefits or profit-sharing thresholds. My voice remained professional, betraying none of the personal sting behind my words. That level of short-term thinking indicates deeper systemic issues. What are you suggesting? Asked Catherine Larson, the eldest woman on the board. I'm suggesting that instead of investing in Henderson Financial, we look at acquiring them at a substantially discounted rate after their Asian venture inevitably falters in the next 8 to 10 months. Their client list alone would be worth the investment, even if we dismantled the rest of the operation. Silence hung in the air for a moment. Then Wells laughed, a short, surprised sound. Eleanor certainly found someone cut from the same cloth, he remarked. You worked at Henderson for 15 years? Larson asked. Why did you leave? The question hung in the air. I could give the sanitized version, the professional explanation. Instead, I chose Eleanor's path, unvarnished truth. They fired me during restructuring after I'd brought in over $400 million in managed assets. The same day, my husband emptied our accounts and disappeared with his mistress. 2 betrayals. One day. I closed my folder deliberately. Since then, I've learned valuable lessons about loyalty, about seeing people for who they truly are, and about the importance of controlling your own destiny. The room was perfectly still. Eleanor built this company on relationships and integrity, I continued. I intend to honor that legacy while ensuring Blackwood doesn't just survive, but thrives. In an increasingly cutthroat market, I believe we can be both principled and profitable. Those who disagree are welcome to present their resignations. No one moved. Now, I smiled for the first time. Shall we discuss the quarterly projections? As the meeting progressed, I felt something stirring within me that I hadn't felt since that devastating day, a sense of power. Not just the power that came with wealth or position, but the deeper power of claiming my own voice, of turning betrayal into opportunity. Eleanor had seen something in me that even I hadn't fully recognized. Now it was time to prove her right and make everyone who had underestimated me regret it, starting with Henderson Financial. The board meeting concluded 2 hours later. As members filed out, Catherine Larson lingered behind. Eleanor called me the night before she passed, she said quietly. Told me to keep an eye on you, that you'd surprise us all. She offered a small, approving nod. I can see why she chose you. I gathered my papers, a strange calm settling over me. This is just the beginning. That night, I drove past my old house one last time. The foreclosure notice was visible in the window, a chapter closing. Tomorrow, I would move into Eleanor's Greenwich estate while renovations began on the Berkshire property, my future home. As I pulled away, my phone rang, an unknown number. Diana Mitchell, I answered. Diana, it's Martin Henderson. His voice carried that familiar forced joviality. I heard about your windfall, quite the turn of events. Of course he had heard. News travels fast in financial circles. What can I do for you, Martin? I was thinking we should have lunch, discuss potential partnerships, water under the bridge regarding your departure. These things happen in business. I pulled over, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and gold. You fired me after 15 years via a form letter, Martin, the same day my husband stole our life savings. I didn't know about Robert, of course. Terrible business. He coughed awkwardly. But surely you understand business decisions aren't personal. You're right, Martin. They aren't. I watched a bird soar across the darkening sky. So you'll understand that my decision to reject Henderson's investment proposal to my board wasn't personal either. Nor will it be personal when Blackwood acquires Henderson's client list after your Asian venture collapses. Silence stretched across the line. This is business, Martin. And business, as you said, isn't personal. I paused. But what comes next might be. I ended the call and drove toward my new beginning, Eleanor's letter tucked safely in my purse. Behind me lay the ruins of betrayal. Ahead, the promise of retribution. And somewhere in the Maldives, Robert and Claudia had no idea what was coming. Eleanor's Greenwich estate loomed before me, a stately colonial with pristine white columns and manicured gardens. The caretaker, a silver-haired man named Wilson, greeted me at the door with respectful formality. Ms. Blackwood kept your room ready for the past 3 years, he informed me as we climbed the curved staircase. Said it was only a matter of time before you'd need it. The revelation stopped me mid-step. She kept a room for me? For 3 years? Wilson smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. Ms. Blackwood saw things others didn't. She was rarely wrong. He opened double doors to reveal a spacious suite overlooking the garden. Unlike the rest of the house's traditional decor, this room featured clean, modern lines with touches of deep blue, my favorite color. A sleek desk faced floor-to-ceiling windows, an elegant chess set arranged on one corner. She redecorated it twice, Wilson added. Said it needed to reflect who you'd become, not who you were. I ran my fingertips over the desk's smooth surface, wondering what else Eleanor had foreseen. The chess set caught my eye, the pieces arranged mid-game. I recognized the strategy immediately, an aggressive queen's gambit. My preferred opening. On. The nightstand lay a small leather journal embossed with my initials. Inside, the first page bore Eleanor's distinctive handwriting. Diana. 3 things to remember. Power isn't taken. It's claimed by those bold enough to step into it. 2. Vengeance has its place, but legacy outshines it. 3. Trust your instincts about people. They've always been your true superpower. The game is already won. You just need to play it through. I closed the journal, emotion tightening my throat. Eleanor had been preparing for this moment long before I had any inkling of it. Will you be needing anything else tonight, Ms. Mitchell? Wilson asked from the doorway. No, thank you, Wilson. I paused. Actually, yes. Could you please arrange for my new driver to take me to the Blackwood offices at 7 tomorrow? And I'll need the company files on all Henderson Financial interactions. For the past 5 years. Already in your study downstairs, Ms. Mitchell. Ms. Blackwood had them transferred from the office last month. Last month, when she was already dying. I nodded, dismissing him with a quiet thank you. That night, I barely slept, poring over the Henderson files instead. By morning, I had constructed a comprehensive map of vulnerabilities in Martin's company. Over-leveraged investments, questionable accounting practices, and most interestingly, evidence that the Miller account, my last major acquisition before being fired, had been improperly managed since my departure. At precisely 6:55 a.m., a sleek black Bentley pulled into the circular driveway. My new driver, a woman in her 30s with close-cropped hair and military posture, opened the rear door with practiced efficiency. Good morning, Ms. Mitchell. I'm Alexis. Ms. Blackwood personally selected me to be your security driver. Security. Driver? I slid into the plush leather seat. Yes, ma'am. Former Secret Service. Ms. Blackwood believed personal security was not an area to compromise on. She closed the door and took her position behind the wheel. Particularly for someone about to make the moves you're planning. The cryptic comment hung in the air as we pulled away from the estate. I made a mental note to learn more about exactly what Eleanor had anticipated and prepared for. The Blackwood Investments building gleamed in the morning sun as we approached. Unlike yesterday's tentative entrance, today I strode through the lobby with purpose, employees nodding respectfully as I passed. James Harrington was waiting in my office, Eleanor's former space, now mine. The walls had been repainted overnight, the furnishings subtly updated while maintaining the room's power and gravitas. You've been busy, he observed, gesturing to the files spread across the desk. Henderson's Asian venture isn't just risky, it's borderline fraudulent, I replied, handing him my analysis. They've misrepresented projected returns to investors and understated regulatory obstacles. Harrington scanned the documents, eyebrows rising. This could trigger an SEC investigation. Precisely. And their client management since my departure has been sloppy at best, negligent at worst. I tapped a folder containing the Miller account details, particularly with clients I personally brought in. What are you suggesting? I want to contact my former clients, not as a Blackwood representative yet, just to check in, former advisor to client. See if they're satisfied with Henderson's service. Harrington's lips twitched. Perfectly legal, ethically gray. Henderson crossed the ethical line when they fired me after I brought them millions in managed assets. I'm simply ensuring my former clients are properly served. He nodded slowly. And if they're not? Then I have a fiduciary obligation to inform them of alternatives. By noon, I'd spoken with 3 former clients. By close of business, that number had risen to 12. The pattern was consistent. Service had declined, fees had increased, and personalized attention had disappeared. When Marcus Miller, my last major client at Henderson, called me back, his voice boomed through the speakerphone. Diana, where the hell have you been? These new advisors don't know their assets from their elbows. I've had some changes in my professional situation, Marcus. Well, I need you back. Henderson's got my portfolio in shambles. That Asian investment they pushed, my instincts say it's dodgy, I smiled. Your instincts are usually right, Marcus. Damn straight they are. So where are you now? Started your own shop? I've taken a position at Blackwood Investments, but I should caution you, I'm not just an advisor anymore. I have a controlling interest in the company. Silence, then a low whistle. Well, Diana Mitchell playing in the big leagues now. He paused. Henderson's been squeezing me on fees. Think Blackwood might be interested in my modest $100 million? By Friday, my 5th day as Blackwood's chairperson, I'd reclaimed over $340 million in assets from Henderson Financial. The board was ecstatic. The press had caught wind of the client exodus, publishing a scathing piece questioning Henderson's management practices. Martin's desperate voicemail came that evening. Diana, this has gone far enough. You've made your point. Let's talk terms, partnership, merger, whatever you want. I deleted it without responding. That night, as I sat in Eleanor's, my study, a notification pinged on my tablet. A social media alert I'd set up weeks ago. Robert's name tagged in a post. I hesitated before opening it. The image showed Robert and Claudia on a yacht, champagne glasses raised toward the camera. The caption read, "Celebrating new beginnings and new partnerships. Maldives luxury, living, architectural visions." I zoomed. In on the yacht's name visible in the background. Claudia's Dream. A quick search revealed it was a chartered vessel, $25,000 per day. my money paying for their champagne toast. Cold anger settled in my chest, the kind that didn't flare and fade, but burned steady and focused. My phone rang. Catherine Larson from the board. "Diana, I have interesting news. That mistress your ex ran off with, Claudia Reeves? Her father is Roland Reeves." The name struck a chord. "The hotel developer?" "The very same. Word is, your ex has been using his relationship with Claudia to secure architectural contracts for Reeves's new resort developments. 3 projects already, with more in the pipeline." My mind raced, connecting dots. Robert's architecture business had always struggled, until now. He hadn't just stolen my money. He'd used it to buy his way into a new career through Claudia. "Roland Reeves is looking for investment partners for his next development," Catherine continued. "Apparently, Henderson Financial was in talks to provide backing. Henderson, Martin, Robert. The connections formed a perfect triangle of betrayal and opportunity. "Send me everything we have on Reeves developments," I said, "and find out which Henderson executive is handling the Reeves account." The answer came back within the hour. Jeffrey Parker, Henderson's second-in-command and Martin's right-hand man. Also, my former colleague who'd taken credit for my strategy that landed the Zhang portfolio 3 years ago. I smiled into the darkness of the study. Eleanor's chess set gleamed in the lamplight, the queen positioned for attack. Monday morning found me in a sleek conference room at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel, seated across from Roland Reeves himself, a tanned, silver-haired man with calculating eyes and an expansive smile that never reached them. "Ms. Mitchell, I appreciate you reaching out." He leaned back, studying me. "Though I admit I'm curious why Blackwood suddenly has interest in hotel development. It's not your usual arena." "Diversification, Mr. Reeves. Eleanor Blackwood built an empire by recognizing value where others didn't. I opened a portfolio containing architectural renderings. Your Maldives project has particular potential." His eyebrows rose slightly. "You've done your homework." "Always." I met his gaze directly. "I understand Henderson Financial has been discussing investment terms with you." Reeves laughed, a practiced sound. "News travels fast. Yes, we're in preliminary talks. Jeffrey Parker has presented some interesting financing options." "I'm sure he has. Henderson is eager for high-profile projects after their Asian venture showed concerning returns last quarter." A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. "Concerning returns?" "Parker assured me their Asian investments were exceeding projections." "Is that what he told you?" I slid a folder across the table. "These are the actual performance numbers, verified by 3 independent sources. They're hemorrhaging capital on regulatory compliance issues they failed to anticipate." Reeves flipped through the documents, his expression hardening. "If this is accurate." "It is. And it raises serious questions about their capacity to properly finance your development." I paused, allowing the implications to sink in. "Blackwood, on the other hand, has the liquidity and stability to ensure your project proceeds without financing hiccups." He studied me for a long moment. "What are your terms?" "More favorable than Henderson's. We'll provide the full financing package at 1.2% below their offered rate, with more flexible repayment terms." I slid another document forward. "However, we do have 2 non-negotiable conditions, which are: first, Blackwood receives exclusive rights to finance the next 3 Reeves development projects." He nodded slowly. "Aggressive, but reasonable. And the second? Robert Mitchell is removed from all Reeves development projects, effective immediately." Reeves stilled, surprise flickering across his features. "Mitchell? He's one of our newer architects, talented, dating my daughter, I believe." "Yes. Your daughter's boyfriend embezzled nearly $400,000 from me before fleeing the country with her. That money likely funded his entry into your good graces." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Reeves's expression shifted from surprise to calculation to something harder. You have proof of this embezzlement? Police reports, bank records, and his own written confession. I met his gaze steadily. I have no quarrel with your daughter, Mr. Reeves. She may not have known the source of the funds. But Robert Mitchell is a thief and a fraud. Is that who you want designing your legacy projects? Is that who you want in your daughter's life? Reeves was silent for a long moment, his fingers steepled before him. Then he reached for the contract. My daughter's personal choices are her own affair, he said, signing his name with a flourish. But I don't work with thieves. Mitchell is out. He looked up, something like reluctant respect in his eyes. Henderson won't take this lying down. I'm counting on it. 3 hours later, as I settled into the back of the Bentley, my phone lit up with notifications. Henderson's stock had dropped 4% on rumors of their failed Reeves deal. Robert's professional Instagram had been scrubbed of all Reeves development projects. A text from an unknown international number flashed across my screen. What the hell did you do? Roland just terminated my contracts. Claudia is furious. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I called Catherine Larson. The Reeves deal is secured, I informed her. Schedule a press release for tomorrow morning, and I want a full strategy session regarding Henderson's vulnerable client list. Already in progress, she replied. Martin Henderson has been trying to reach you. 3 calls in the last hour. Let him wait. I watched the city pass by outside the window. How's their stock doing? Down 4.7% now and falling. There are whispers about liquidity issues. Those whispers will get louder by week's end. I ended the call as the Bentley pulled up to the Blackwood building. In the lobby, I paused before the memorial portrait of Eleanor that had been installed over the weekend. Her sharp eyes seemed to follow me, approving and challenging all at once. Ms. Mitchell? Alexis appeared at my side. There's someone waiting in your office. He insisted it was urgent. Who? James Parker, from Henderson Financial. Jeffrey Parker, Martin's right-hand man who'd been handling the Reeves account. The same Jeffrey who'd taken credit for my work for years. I found him pacing before the windows, his usual polished appearance showing signs of strain, tie loosened, hair slightly disheveled. Jeffrey, to what do I owe this unexpected visit? He spun around, relief washing over his features. Diana, thank God. We need to talk. We're talking. I set my briefcase down and took my seat behind the desk, not inviting him to sit. This has gone far enough. He ran a hand through his hair. The Reeves deal, the client poaching, Martin's furious. The board is asking questions. I imagine they are. Look, I get it. You're angry about how things ended at Henderson, but this vendetta is affecting innocent people. Our employees, our shareholders. Were those concerns when you fired me after 15 years? Or when you took credit for my Jung strategy? Or perhaps when you mismanaged the Miller account after I brought it in? He had the grace to look uncomfortable. Business decisions aren't personal, Diana. A common refrain among those making the decisions, not those affected by them. I leaned forward. What exactly are you here for, Jeffrey? Martin sent me to offer terms. A merger. Blackwood and Henderson joining forces. You'd have a significant position. No. The flatness of my tone stopped him mid-sentence. Blackwood isn't merging with Henderson. Henderson is failing due to its own mismanagement and short-sighted leadership. I stood, signaling the meeting's end. When you're ready to discuss acquisition terms, with Henderson as the acquired, not the acquirer, Blackwood will listen. Not before. His face flushed with anger. You're overplaying your hand. Martin has connections you can't imagine. People who owe him favors. This little revenge fantasy of yours could backfire spectacularly. Is that a threat, Jeffrey? He stepped closer. It's a reality check. You think Eleanor Blackwood's reputation will protect you forever? You're still the same Diana who brought coffee to conference rooms. Don't forget that. Something cold and clarifying settled over me. That's where you're wrong. I'm not the same Diana at all. I pressed the intercom. Alexis, please escort Mr. Parker out. He was just leaving. As the door closed behind him, I turned to the window, watching the city lights begin to twinkle in. The gathering dusk. Jeffrey's threat wasn't idle. Martin did have connections, people who owed him favors in the financial world. But so had Eleanor. And now, so did I. I opened my laptop and typed a brief email to the board, effective immediately. Initiate Phase 2 of our Henderson strategy. Authorization code, Queen's Gambit. Within minutes, responses flooded in. The board was unanimously on board. By morning, Blackwood would begin systematic acquisition of Henderson's vulnerable debt positions, a move that would give us significant leverage when their Asian venture inevitably collapsed. As night fell over the city, I poured myself a glass of Eleanor's favorite scotch and raised it to her portrait. The game continues, I murmured. My phone pinged with another social media alert. Robert and Claudia, looking considerably less celebratory than in their previous post. The caption read simply, "Weathering unexpected challenges. Stronger together." Zoomed in on Robert's face, the strain around his eyes, the forced smile. He felt the ground shifting beneath him, but couldn't yet see the scope of what was coming. Meanwhile, across the ocean, a forensic accounting team I'd hired was methodically tracking the movement of my stolen funds through a labyrinth of offshore accounts. It was just a matter of time. Ms. Mitchell? Wilson appeared at the study door. There's a secure call for you from the Cayman Islands. I smiled. Perhaps less time than I'd thought. Put it through, I said, setting down my glass. And Wilson? Have the guest room prepared. I believe we'll soon have company. They accessed the funds through a shell corporation registered in the Caymans, but the money didn't stay there, explained Raj Mehta, the forensic accountant whose voice came through the secure line with crystal clarity. They moved most of it to Belize, then to Singapore, and finally to a private bank in the Maldives. I leaned forward, the study's warm lighting a contrast to the cold determination in my voice. Can we trace the specific accounts? Better than that, Ms. Mitchell. We've identified the exact properties purchased with your funds. His tone carried a hint of professional satisfaction. A beachfront villa on Kunfunadu Island, purchased for $1.2 million through a holding company, registered to Ms. Claudia Reeves, and approximately $800,000 in luxury furnishings, vehicles, and personal items. Documentation? Complete and verified. The paper trail is irrefutable. Raj paused. There's something else. Your husband recently attempted to move the remaining funds, approximately $1.7 million, to a new account in Switzerland. We've filed emergency injunctions in 3 jurisdictions to freeze those transfers. My fingers traced the edge of Eleanor's chest set. And the Maldivian government? Cooperative, given the evidence. Financial fraud of this magnitude is taken seriously even in privacy havens. They've agreed to freeze the property assets pending formal charges. I thanked him and ended the call, sitting back in the leather chair that still carried the faint scent of Eleanor's perfume. The pieces were falling into place faster than I'd anticipated. Within weeks, Robert would find his stolen paradise frozen by international financial authorities. But not before I made my next move. Morning brought the first ripples of Phase 2. Blackwood had quietly acquired a significant portion of Henderson Financial's debt through a series of disguised transactions. The news hadn't broken publicly yet, but financial insiders were beginning to whisper. Henderson's stock had dropped another 3.2% overnight. At precisely 9:30 a.m., my private line rang, a number I recognized immediately. Diana Mitchell, I answered, keeping my voice neutral. This is Marcus Miller. His usual booming confidence sounded muted. We need to talk. Of course, Marcus. Is everything all right with your portfolio? Not that. It's about Henderson. He lowered his voice. I just got off the phone with Martin. He's desperate, Diana, asking me to leverage my connections to arrange an emergency line of credit. Interesting. Martin approaching clients for financial lifelines meant things were worse than I'd thought. What did you tell him? To get his house in order. But listen. He hesitated. He mentioned you. Said you're orchestrating some kind of revenge campaign, that you've turned down reasonable merger offers. Did he mention firing me after I brought in his biggest accounts? Or mismanaging those accounts after I left? I kept my tone conversational, matter of fact. Marcus chuckled without humor. No, somehow those details were omitted. He paused. Diana, you know I respect you. That's why I moved my accounts to Blackwood. But I've got friends with serious money, still at Henderson. If they go under, their clients will be protected, I assured him. This isn't about hurting innocent investors, Marcus. It's about accountability. After ending the call, I summoned my executive team to the conference room. Catherine Larson arrived first, followed by Timothy Wells and the others. The energy was different today. No more wariness, only focused anticipation. Henderson's liquidity problems are accelerating, I began, pulling up the latest data on the wall screen. Their Asian venture lost another 12% this week. They're approaching clients for emergency capital. Desperate moves, Catherine observed. How much of their debt have we acquired? 27%, Timothy answered. Another 15% is available through secondary markets if we move quickly. I nodded. Make it happen. And prepare a client protection plan. I want a seamless transition process ready for when Henderson clients need to move their assets. And Martin Henderson? Catherine asked the question everyone was thinking. We'll soon discover the true cost of disposing of loyal employees, I replied. Now, regarding the Reeves development, my assistant's discreet knock interrupted us. Ms. Mitchell, I apologize for the interruption. There's an urgent call from Ms. Claudia Reeves. The room fell. Silent. Every board member knew the story of my ex-husband's betrayal. It had become something of a legend in the company, a modern financial revenge tale in the making. I'll take it in my office, I said, excusing myself. I let the call ring 3 times, before answering, steeling myself to hear a voice connected to so much pain. This is Diana Mitchell. Ms. Mitchell. Claudia's voice was tight, controlled, not what I expected from the woman who'd helped steal my life savings. I believe we need to talk. I'm not sure what we would have to discuss, Ms. Reeves. Don't play naive. It doesn't suit you. Her voice sharpened. My villa has been frozen by Maldivian authorities. My accounts are under investigation. Even my father has distanced himself. Financial crimes have consequences, I replied evenly. Perhaps you should discuss this with Robert. He's the one who emptied our accounts. Robert told me that money was his, she snapped. Part of his divorce settlement. We weren't divorced when he took it, and there was no settlement, only theft. I kept my voice level, refusing to let emotion creep in. Did you never question where a struggling architect suddenly got $400,000? Her silence told me everything. I don't know what Robert told you about me, I continued. But I built my career on understanding money and the people who move it. Did you really think I wouldn't track every dollar? What do you want? Her voice had lost its edge, reality, clearly setting in. Justice. Return of my stolen funds. And perhaps a measure of consequence for those who thought I could be discarded and forgotten. And Robert? She asked quietly. What about him? He's gone. Her voice cracked slightly. Disappeared 3 days ago when the first freeze orders came through. Took his passport, some cash, left his phone behind. A cold weight settled in my stomach. Not surprise. I'd always known Robert was a coward at heart, but something deeper. He'd abandoned Claudia just as he'd abandoned me. Ms. Reeves, I said carefully, I suggest you get a good lawyer. One who specializes in financial crimes and asset recovery. You're going to need it. After ending the call, I stood at my office window, watching clouds cast moving shadows across the city below. Robert, running again, leaving Claudia to face the consequences alone, just as he'd left me to face the ruins of our financial life. My intercom buzzed. "Ms. Mitchell, there's a Detective Powell here to see you, regarding Robert Mitchell." The detective was a compact woman with observant eyes and an economy of movement that spoke of years of experience. She declined coffee, coming straight to the point as she settled into the chair across from my desk. "When did you last have contact with your husband, Ms. Mitchell?" "Ex-husband," I corrected, "and not since he disappeared with my money 4 months ago," she nodded, making a brief note. "We're investigating some concerning transactions connected to Mr. Mitchell. Large cash withdrawals, attempts to purchase identification documents." She looked up. "There's evidence he may have been involved in more than just embezzlement from your joint accounts." My pulse quickened. "What kind of evidence?" "Financial patterns consistent with money laundering. We believe Henderson Financial may be involved." She studied my reaction carefully. "Given your current position at Blackwood and your history with both Henderson and Mr. Mitchell, any insights you might have would be valuable." I considered my words carefully. Eleanor's voice seemed to whisper in my ear, "Information is currency. Spend it wisely." "Detective, I believe you should look into Henderson's Asian venture, particularly the movement of funds through their Singapore office." Martin Henderson personally oversaw those transactions. Her eyebrow rose slightly. "You seem well informed." "Financial analysis is what I do." I met her gaze directly. "And I've had reason to look closely at Henderson's operations recently." After the detective left, I called an emergency meeting with James Harrington and my security team. If Robert was involved in something bigger at Henderson, something that had attracted police attention, I needed to understand the implications for our acquisition strategy. "We need complete transparency," Harrington advised. "If Henderson is under investigation for financial crimes, it could significantly impact our position." "Or strengthen it," I countered. "A company under investigation becomes more vulnerable. Their options narrow." "True, but we need to ensure Blackwood remains untainted. Any acquisition would need to be structured to isolate potential liabilities." I nodded. "Prepare the necessary firewalls. But let's accelerate our timetable. If Henderson is involved in money laundering, their collapse could come sooner than we projected." That evening, as I reviewed the restructured acquisition plans, Alexis appeared at my study door. "Ms. Mitchell, you have a visitor. He's waiting at the gate." She handed me a security tablet displaying the camera feed. Jeffrey Parker sat in his car outside the estate gates, looking haggard and nervous. "Did he say what he wants?" "Just that it's urgent and private." Alexis's expression remained neutral, but her posture tensed. "Would you like me to send him away?" I studied his image on the screen, the disheveled appearance, the constant checking of mirrors. This wasn't the composed, arrogant Jeffrey who'd threatened me in my office days ago. "No, let him in, but stay close." Jeffrey's expensive sedan crunched up the gravel driveway, parking at an awkward angle. He emerged looking like he hadn't slept in days, shirt wrinkled, normally perfect hair unkempt. "Diana," he said as I met him in the foyer. "Thank you for seeing me." "You have 5 minutes," I replied, leading him to the small receiving room rather than my personal study. "I assume this is about Henderson's counteroffer to our acquisition terms?" He laughed, a hollow, desperate sound. "There is no counteroffer. There's barely a Henderson left to counter anything." He ran a hand through his hair. "It's falling apart. The Asian investments, the client exodus, the debt acquisitions. We're hemorrhaging." "That sounds like a Henderson problem, not a Blackwood one." "It's about to become everyone's problem." He lowered his voice. "Martin's been cooking the books for years. The Asian venture wasn't just risky, it was a cover. a way to move money through less regulated markets. My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. If you're here to make accusations of financial impropriety, I have proof. He pulled a flash drive from his pocket, placing it on the table between us. Transactions, account numbers, dates, everything the authorities would need. And you're bringing this to me because I need protection. His eyes darted toward the window. When this breaks, Martin will try to frame others. He's already setting me up to take the fall. I studied him, remembering all the times he'd taken credit for my work, dismissed my concerns, treated me as less than. Now here he was begging for salvation. "What does this have to do with Robert Mitchell?" I asked. Jeffrey's head snapped up, surprise evident. "How did you—" "Detective Powell paid me a visit today. She mentioned Robert might be involved in something bigger than just stealing from me." He exhaled slowly. Robert was a middleman. Martin used him to move cash through architectural firms overseas, construction companies, developers. Your husband's new connection to Roland Reeves made him particularly useful. Did Reeves know? I doubt it. Robert would have handled it through the architectural contracts. Inflated costs, phantom services. He leaned forward. When you started dismantling Henderson and pushed Robert out of the Reeves projects, Martin panicked. Thought Robert might talk if pressured. He arranged things. The implication hung heavy in the air. Arranged what, exactly? Robert didn't run, Diana. At least not voluntarily. Jeffrey's voice dropped to a whisper. Martin has connections. People who handle problems. Your ex-husband has become a liability to too many powerful people. Cold understanding washed over me. The detective's questions, Robert's disappearance, the cash withdrawals and identity documents, likely not made by Robert at all, but staged. To suggest he'd fled. That flash drive, I nodded toward it. Does it implicate Robert? It implicates everyone. Martin, me, the partners. Robert's involvement is documented too. He pushed it toward me. I'll testify to everything. In exchange, for immunity and protection, I picked up the drive, turning it over in my fingers. Why come to me? Why not go directly to the authorities? Because you understand how this world works. And because... He hesitated. Because despite everything, you were always the most principled person at Henderson, the only one Eleanor Blackwood trusted. I slipped the drive into my pocket. Wait here. In my study, I inserted the drive into a secure, isolated laptop, one not connected to any Blackwood systems. The files were extensive: transaction records, meeting notes, email exchanges, evidence of a sophisticated money laundering operation using Henderson's legitimate business as cover. Robert's name appeared throughout, his architectural contracts serving as conduits for millions in illicit funds. I picked up the phone and dialed Detective Powell's direct line. "I have information on the Henderson case," I said when she answered, "and on Robert Mitchell." After arranging for the detective to collect Jeffrey and the evidence, I stood at the window of my study, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled. Everything was accelerating now, moving beyond the careful game of financial chess I'd been playing. Martin wasn't just a corporate shark who'd discarded a loyal employee. He was a criminal who'd used my ex-husband as a pawn, then likely arranged his disappearance. And Robert, whatever his fate, had been deeper in the mire than I'd realized. My phone rang. Catherine Larson. "Diana, have you seen the news? Henderson's stock has been halted. There are rumors of a federal investigation." "It's not a rumor," I replied. "Call an emergency board meeting for 7 a.m. tomorrow and contact our PR team. We need to get ahead of this." I ended the call, turning to find Wilson standing quietly in the doorway. "Ms. Mitchell, there's something you should see." He held out a sealed envelope. "Ms. Blackwood instructed me to give you this if Henderson ever faced legal troubles." A thud. Envelope contained a single sheet of Eleanor's stationery and a small key. Diana, if you're reading this, Martin Henderson's house of cards has begun to collapse. I've suspected his illegal activities for years but could never prove them. Now it falls to you to navigate the aftermath. Remember that true power isn't in destruction but in rebuilding. Henderson's clients and employees don't deserve to suffer for Martin's crimes. The enclosed key opens a safe deposit box at First National. Inside you'll find evidence I gathered over the years. Not enough to bring charges, but enough to help you understand the full scope of what you're dealing with. The chess game just became more complex. Play accordingly. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of Eleanor's foresight once again. She hadn't just prepared me to take over her company, she'd prepared me for this exact scenario. Wilson, please have the car brought around. I need to visit First National before they close. Of course, Ms. Mitchell. He paused at the door. Ms. Blackwood would be proud of how you're handling all this. She always said you had a gift for seeing the patterns others missed. As the Bentley pulled away from the estate, my phone lit up with an incoming call. Roland Reeves. Mitchell, I answered. I assume you've heard about Henderson, he said without preamble, and about your ex-husband's disappearance. I've heard. My daughter is being questioned by federal investigators. His voice carried none of its usual, smooth confidence. She claims she knew nothing about Robert's activities or the source of the funds. And do you believe her? A pause. I do. Claudia can be impulsive, but she's not criminal. He cleared his throat. What happens now with our deal? The deal stands, Mr. Reeves. Blackwood honors its commitments. I watched the city blur past the window. But I would suggest complete transparency with the authorities. Henderson's fall will create ripples throughout the financial world. Those with nothing to hide will weather it best. After ending the call, I opened Eleanor's journal, reading again the advice she'd left me. Vengeance has its place, but legacy outshines it. The game had changed. What began as a quest for justice against those who betrayed me had evolved into something larger, a responsibility to protect innocent clients and employees from the fallout of Martin's crimes, to build something better from the ruins of Henderson. As the car pulled up to First National Bank, my resolve crystallized. Martin would face justice. Henderson would be acquired and transformed. And as for Robert, whatever his fate, it was no longer my concern. He had made his choices, and they had led him to his end. I stepped out of the car, Eleanor's key clutched firmly in my hand, ready to uncover the final pieces of the puzzle she'd prepared for me, and to write the next chapter of the legacy she'd entrusted to my care. Eleanor's safe deposit box contained exactly what I expected from her: meticulously organized evidence, financial records, transaction histories, surveillance photos, and personal notes spanning 5 years. She'd been tracking Martin Henderson's activities with the patient precision of a spider mapping its web. Most revealing was a manila folder labeled Contingency. Inside lay detailed strategies for acquiring Henderson Financial in various scenarios, including one specifically titled Criminal Exposure. Eleanor hadn't just suspected Martin's illegal activities. She'd prepared a comprehensive plan to protect the financial ecosystem when, not if, his empire collapsed. I spread the documents across the Bentley's back seat on the drive back to the estate, absorbing Eleanor's insights and calculations. By the time we pulled through the gates, I had a clear vision of what needed to happen next. The board was already assembled in the conference room when I arrived, despite the late hour. No one complained. They understood the gravity of the situation. Henderson Financial is facing federal investigation for money laundering and financial fraud, I announced without preamble, taking my place at the head of the table. Within 48 hours, their stock will be essentially worthless. Their clients will be scrambling for secure havens for their assets. So, we accelerate our acquisition plan? Timothy Wells asked. I shook my head. We pivot. A direct acquisition is now too risky. we'd inherit potential liabilities and regulatory scrutiny. I distributed copies of a revised strategy document I'd prepared based on Eleanor's contingency plan. Instead, we'll establish a new entity, Blackwood Recovery Group, specifically designed to rescue Henderson's legitimate client accounts and assets. Catherine Larson flipped through the document, nodding slowly. Ingenious. We avoid acquiring Henderson as a corporate entity while securing their valuable client base. Precisely. We're not buying a company. We're rescuing its clients from a sinking ship. I turned to James Harrington. We'll need regulatory clearance. Contact our allies at the SEC and Treasury. Position this as a market stability measure. And the Henderson executives? Timothy asked. Martin and his inner circle? We'll face justice through legal channels. I kept my voice neutral, though the thought of Martin in handcuffs brought a certain satisfaction. Our concern is protecting innocent employees and clients. By 3 a.m., we had a comprehensive strategy in place. By 6 a.m., our legal team had drafted the necessary documents. By 9 a.m., when news of federal agents raiding Henderson Financial's headquarters hit the financial press, Blackwood was already implementing its rescue operation. I watched from my office, window as the financial world erupted in chaos. Henderson's stock plummeted before trading was halted entirely. Financial news channels showed Martin Henderson being escorted from his home in handcuffs, his face ashen with shock and rage. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since dawn. Former colleagues, journalists, Henderson clients desperate for guidance. I directed them all to our newly established crisis response team, maintaining my focus on the bigger picture. Only when Detective Powell called did I answer personally. Ms. Mitchell, I thought you should know. We've recovered a body from a private airfield outside the city. Her voice was carefully professional. Preliminary identification suggests it's Robert Mitchell, though I'd suspected this outcome since Jeffrey's revelation. Hearing it confirmed sent a cold wave through me. Not grief exactly. Robert had killed that when he stole our future and fled, but something more complex. A final closing of a chapter. Cause of death? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Still under investigation, but evidence suggests he was eliminated to prevent him from talking about Henderson's operations. She paused. The information you provided has been invaluable. We've already arrested 4 key players, including Martin Henderson. After ending the call, I sat motionless at my desk, unexpected emotions washing over me. Robert was gone. Not sunning himself on a beach with my money, not building a new life with Claudia, gone in the most permanent sense. The man I had once loved, once built dreams with, had been disposed of like an inconvenient business problem. A soft knock at my door broke through my thoughts. Wilson entered carrying a silver tray with tea. Ms. Mitchell, forgive the intrusion. He set the tray down gently. Ms. Blackwood always found a moment of quiet reflection helpful during turbulent times. I looked up at him, suspecting he knew more than he let on. Did she tell you about Henderson? About what Martin was doing? Wilson's face remained impassive, but his eyes held understanding. Ms. Blackwood shared her concerns. She believed justice would eventually find its way to Mr. Henderson's door. And Robert? Did she foresee that too? Ms. Blackwood believed that those who betray others often find themselves betrayed in turn. He straightened a slight crease in his jacket. She would want you to focus on what can be built, not what has been lost. With a respectful nod, he withdrew, leaving me with Eleanor's favorite blend of tea and the weight of new responsibility. By evening, the first phase of our rescue operation was complete. Over 60% of Henderson's legitimate client accounts had been transferred to Blackwood Recovery Group. Our call centers had handled over 3,000 inquiries. The financial press was calling it the most efficient financial rescue operation in Wall Street history. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt oddly hollow, the victory tasting different than I'd imagined. As midnight approached, I found myself in Eleanor's garden, my garden now, walking the same stone paths she must have walked countless times before me. The night air carried the scent of roses and the distant hum of the city. My phone vibrated with a text from Catherine. Federal authorities formally requesting your testimony against Martin Henderson. Scheduled for Tuesday. Legal team standing. I slipped the phone back into my pocket without responding. Tuesday would come soon enough. A movement at the garden entrance caught my attention. Alexis appeared, her silhouette sharp against the house lights. "Ms. Mitchell, there's someone at the gate. Claudia Reeves." My step faltered. "Claudia? Here?" "Yes, ma'am. Alone. She's requesting to speak with you personally." I considered sending her away. What could possibly be gained from facing the woman who had participated in dismantling my life? Yet something, curiosity, perhaps, or a need for final closure, made me nod. "Let her in. Escort her to the garden pavilion." Claudia Reeves was not what I expected. Gone was the glossy, carefree woman from Instagram poses. This Claudia looked hollowed out, her designer clothes hanging loosely on a frame that had lost weight too quickly. Her eyes, when they met mine, held none of the entitled arrogance I'd imagined, only exhaustion and something that might have been shame. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, her voice hoarse. I gestured to the pavilion bench, but remained standing. "Why are you here, Ms. Reeves?" "To return this." She placed a small velvet pouch on the stone table between us. "It was your grandmother's. Robert took it when he left." I opened the pouch. Inside lay my grandmother's sapphire ring, the one heirloom I'd truly mourned losing, more than the money or the house. "I didn't know it was stolen when he gave it to me," Claudia continued. "He said it was a family piece he'd inherited." "You could have mailed it. I wanted to see you, to say—" She faltered. "The federal agents showed me everything. The accounts, the transactions, how Robert used me to access my father's projects." Her composure cracked slightly. "I didn't know about any of it. The stolen money, the laundering, using my father's developments. I thought he loved me." I slipped the ring onto my finger, its familiar weight both comforting and painful. "We both believed that, it seems. They found his body." Her voice broke. "Did you know?" I nodded. "Detective Powell called me. They're saying Martin had him killed, that Robert was going to talk." She looked up, tears tracking silently down her face. "Was that your doing? Did you force him into a corner where—" "No." My voice was sharper than intended. "Robert's choices led him there. His decision to steal, to participate in Martin's schemes, to use you and your father's business. Those were his choices, not mine." She was quiet for a long moment. "My father has disowned me. My accounts are still frozen. The press follows me everywhere." A bitter laugh escaped her. "I suppose you think I deserve all this." I studied her, this woman who had once represented everything I'd lost. In the moonlight, she looked young and broken and lost. "No one deserves to be used and discarded," I said finally. "Not you, not me." "What happens now?" she asked, her voice small. It was the question I'd been asking myself all day. What happens after vengeance is satisfied but brings no peace? What happens when justice is served but cannot heal what was broken? "Now we rebuild," I answered. "Separately." She nodded, rising to leave. At the pavilion steps, she turned back. "He wasn't always the monster he became, was he? There must have been something real once." I thought of the early years with Robert, his dreams, his laughter, the man I thought I knew. There was. But, that man is gone. Maybe he never truly existed. After Claudia left, I remained in the garden, grandmother's ring catching moonlight on my finger. A text from James Harrington broke the silence. "Henderson clients officially surpass $4 billion. in assets transferred to Blackwood Recovery. Board suggests press conference tomorrow to reassure markets. The press conference. Of course. The financial world would expect Blackwood's new leader to address the situation publicly, to project confidence and stability, to demonstrate that, despite the dramatic collapse of a major firm, the system remained strong. I returned to my study and crafted my statement carefully, consulting Eleanor's writings for inspiration. By dawn, I had a speech that balanced necessary reassurance with hard truths about accountability in the financial sector. 3 hours later, I stood before a forest of microphones in Blackwood's main conference room, cameras flashing as I addressed a packed gallery of financial journalists. Good morning. As you know, Henderson Financial is currently under federal investigation for serious financial crimes. These actions represent a profound breach of trust, with clients, with employees, and with the public. I paused, meeting the gaze of reporters, directly. Blackwood Investments Group has established a dedicated recovery division to ensure that innocent clients and employees do not suffer for the actions of corrupt leadership. We have already secured over $4 billion in assets and are working closely with regulatory authorities to ensure a stable transition. Questions erupted, but I held up a hand for silence. Let me be clear. What happened at Henderson was not a system failure. It was a moral failure. In the coming weeks, Blackwood will announce new transparency initiatives that we hope will set new standards for the industry. I squared my shoulders. We can and must do better. As the press conference concluded, Catherine approached with a knowing smile. Eleanor would have approved. That perfect balance of reassurance and challenge. Let's hope the board agrees. The board is ecstatic. Our stock is up 12% since opening. The financial press is calling you the new guard of Wall Street integrity. She handed me a tablet displaying market data. You've accomplished in days what most executives couldn't manage in years. Had I? The numbers confirmed Blackwood's successful execution of the rescue plan. Henderson's legitimate assets were being efficiently absorbed into our structure. Martin and his inner circle were facing serious charges. Even my personal funds were in the process of being recovered through international financial authorities. I had achieved everything I'd set out to do when I first took Eleanor's chair. Yet as I handed the tablet back to Catherine, I felt strangely unsatisfied. Is everything all right? She asked, noting my expression. Fine. I forced a smile. Just tired. It's been an intense few days. That evening, I declined Wilson's offer of dinner and retreated to Eleanor's, my bedroom balcony. The city spread before me, lights twinkling against the darkening sky. Somewhere in a federal holding facility, Martin Henderson was facing the consequences of his actions. Somewhere in the morgue, Robert's body lay as evidence in a financial crime investigation. Somewhere in the city, Claudia Reeves was learning to navigate a life shattered by betrayal. And here I stood, victorious, yet hollow. My phone chimed with an email notification. An automated update from the forensic accounting team. Asset recovery process complete. Funds transferred to secure account pending verification. Estimated value, $394,162.09. My stolen money returned at last. I should have felt vindication. Instead, I felt only a dull ache of recognition that no amount of recovered funds could restore what had truly been lost. Trust, innocence, the belief in a shared future. A light knock at the bedroom door interrupted my thoughts. Wilson entered, carrying a small wooden box. Ms. Mitchell, I believe it's time for this, he said, placing it on the bedside table. What is it? Ms. Blackwood instructed me to give you this after you had achieved your first major victory as Blackwood's leader. A small smile touched his lips. I believe today qualifies. Inside the box lay a sealed envelope and a small silver key unlike any I recognized. I opened the envelope first, finding Eleanor's familiar handwriting. Diana, If Wilson has given you this box, you have successfully navigated your first major challenge as Blackwood's leader. Congratulations. You're probably feeling less triumphant than you expected. Success often arrives wearing a different face than we imagined. The enclosed key opens the private study in the East Wing, a room I've kept locked for many years. Inside, you'll find my true legacy. Not Blackwood Investments, not the financial empire, but something far more valuable. It's time for you to decide what kind of legacy you wish to build. Eleanor Wilson watched as I read, his expression revealing nothing. Would you like me to show you to the East Wing study now? I nodded, following him through corridors I'd never fully explored despite weeks in the mansion. We stopped before an unmarked door in a quiet, book-lined hallway. Ms. Blackwood rarely allowed anyone inside, Wilson explained, stepping back. She considered it her sanctuary. The key turned smoothly in the lock. The room beyond was not what I expected. Not another imposing office or display of wealth, but a warm, intimate space filled with photographs, letters, and mementos. One wall held framed newspaper clippings and thank you notes. Another displayed photographs of young people in graduation gowns, families standing before new homes, small businesses with proud owners. At the center sat a simple desk with a leather-bound book titled The True Balance Sheet. I opened it carefully. Inside, in Eleanor's precise handwriting, were entries spanning decades. Not financial transactions, but life investments. Scholarships funded, mortgages secured for deserving families, medical bills paid, small businesses saved, lives touched, futures secured, communities strengthened, all done quietly, without publicity. She helped all these people? I asked, turning to Wilson. Ms. Blackwood believed that financial power carried moral responsibility. Wilson gestured around the room. This was her true work, the balance sheet that mattered most to her. I sank into Eleanor's chair, understanding finally dawning. She hadn't chosen me as her successor because of my financial acumen or even my integrity in business matters. She had seen in me the potential to continue this deeper legacy, to use wealth and power not just for justice or vengeance, but for genuine positive impact. On the desk lay one final envelope, addressed simply, "For Diana, when she understands." Inside was the shortest note yet, now you see. Wealth is a tool, not a destination. Justice matters, but healing matters more. What will you build with what you've been given? Your move, Queen. I closed the journal, a new clarity settling over me. The hollow feeling after my victory, the unsatisfying taste of vengeance achieved. Eleanor had anticipated it all. She'd known that reclaiming what was taken from me would only bring me to this crossroads, not beyond it. The true challenge wasn't winning the game of financial chess. It was deciding what game I wanted to play for the rest of my life. As dawn broke over the city, I sat at my desk composing 2 letters. The first to Claudia Reeves, offering a position with the Blackwood Foundation, a new initiative I would announce next week, focused on financial education and support for victims of financial abuse. The second to my lawyers, instructing them to establish a recovery fund for Henderson employees impacted by the company's collapse. When Wilson arrived with morning coffee, he found me in my sanctuary, adding a new entry to C. The leather-bound journal, Diana Mitchell. First investment as Blackwood's heir, turning justice into healing. Will there be anything else, Ms. Mitchell? Wilson asked, his eyes noting the open journal with quiet approval. I closed the book gently, rising with newfound purpose. Yes, Wilson. Please arrange a meeting with the board for this afternoon. It's time to discuss Blackwood's true future. As he left, I took one final look around the room filled with lives changed and communities strengthened. This was Eleanor's real legacy, not the financial empire, not the power or prestige, but the lives she had touched, the positive difference she had made, and now it was my legacy to continue. The recovered money that Robert had stolen would become the seed funding for the Blackwood Foundation's first initiative. The victory over Henderson would become a platform for industry-wide reforms. Even the painful lessons of betrayal would serve a purpose, helping me identify and assist others who had been similarly victimized. Eleanor had been right, as always. The game wasn't over when vengeance was achieved. It was only just beginning. Picked up the white queen from the chess set on my desk. No longer a weapon of attack, but a symbol of strategic vision and far-reaching impact. With decisive fingers, I moved it to the center of the board, opening up possibilities in all directions. Checkmate wasn't the end. It was merely the freedom to start a new, more meaningful game. 6 months passed in a whirlwind of transformation. The Blackwood Foundation launched with $50 million in initial funding, my recovered assets plus a significant contribution from Blackwood's corporate reserves. Our first initiative, a program providing financial counsel and emergency assistance to victims of economic abuse, had already helped over 200 families rebuild their lives. The morning headlines highlighted Blackwood's latest quarterly earnings, our most successful to date. The rescue operation had evolved into a complete reinvention of Henderson's former business model, with enhanced transparency protocols that were setting new industry standards. I scanned the business section while having breakfast on the terrace. Martin Henderson's trial was scheduled to begin next month. Jeffrey Parker, having turned state's evidence, would be the prosecution's star witness. The financial world was still rippling with aftershocks from Henderson's collapse, but Blackwood stood stronger than ever. "Ms. Mitchell," Wilson approached with his customary quiet efficiency. "Ms. Larson has arrived for your meeting." Catherine waited in Eleanor's sanctuary, the East Wing study that had become the heart of my most important work. Over recent months, the room had evolved to include my own contributions alongside Eleanor's legacy. New photographs joined the old, fresh thank you letters appeared on the walls. The leather-bound journal gained entries in my handwriting. The board unanimously approved the expansion proposal, Catherine announced without preamble. Her excitement was evident despite her professional demeanor. "We can begin establishing international offices for the foundation immediately." I smiled, genuine pleasure warming me. Perfect timing. The Henderson asset integration is complete, which frees up our operational teams to support the expansion. There's something else. Catherine handed me a sealed envelope. "From the federal prosecutor's office, regarding your testimony at Martin Henderson's trial." I took the envelope but didn't open it. "Any surprises?" "They're adding charges." Apparently, Martin's criminal activities extended beyond what we initially uncovered. "The prosecutor believes your testimony will be crucial in connecting all the elements." After Catherine left, I opened the envelope. The prosecution had indeed expanded its case against Martin, adding charges related to conspiracy to commit murder. Robert's murder. They wanted me to testify not just about Henderson's financial crimes, but about Robert's role in the money laundering scheme and the events leading to his death. I set the documents aside, emotions I thought I'd resolved resurfacing like a submerged log suddenly breaking the water's surface. Despite everything Robert had done, despite the betrayal and theft, the thought of recounting his final days in a courtroom filled me with unexpected sadness. My phone chimed with a calendar reminder: lunch with Marcus Miller, my former client, who had been first to follow me from Henderson to Blackwood. Now he served on the Foundation's advisory board, bringing his trademark bluntness and business acumen to our philanthropic efforts. The restaurant Marcus had chosen was one of the city's power lunch spots, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the financial district, tables spaced generously for private conversations, discreet servers anticipating needs before they were voiced. "Diana!" Marcus rose as I approached, engulfing my hand in his bear-like grip. At 73, he remained a formidable presence, 6'4" with a shock of white hair and penetrating blue eyes that missed nothing. You look like a woman with the world at her feet. Hardly that, I replied, taking my seat. Just someone trying to balance the ledger. Balance the ledger, he repeated, his voice softening with rare sentiment. Eleanor used that phrase constantly. She'd be proud of what you've built. We covered foundation business over appetizers, a new initiative, providing microloans to women entrepreneurs, an educational program for financial literacy in underserved communities. By the time our entrees arrived, Marcus had shifted to more personal territory. I hear Martin's trial starts next month. You ready for that circus? I took a measured sip of water. As ready as I can be. You know you don't have to do this yourself. The prosecution has Parker, the financial records. You could submit a written statement. I could, I acknowledged. But this isn't just about Martin's crimes or Robert's choices. It's about accountability at every level. The financial industry has operated too long in shadows. If my testimony helps bring some light, I need to give it. Marcus studied me over his glasses. You've changed, Diana. 6 months ago, this was about justice, maybe even revenge. Now it's about something bigger. Maybe I needed to go through one to find the other. He nodded, satisfied with my answer. Eleanor said something similar once, you know. That true purpose often emerges from our deepest wounds. He cut a piece of steak. Speaking of wounds healing, heard anything from the Reeves girl? Claudia starts with the foundation next week. She'll be working with our outreach team, helping identify cases of financial abuse. At Marcus's raised eyebrow, I added, She understands the patterns from the inside now. That kind of insight can't be taught. Risky move, he observed. Not everyone will understand. I'm not looking for universal approval, just making the right moves for the right reasons. After lunch, instead of returning to the office, I directed my driver to take me to the cemetery. I hadn't visited Robert's grave since the funeral, a small, private affair I'd arranged despite our estrangement. Whatever his crimes, whatever pain he had caused, I couldn't bear the thought of him buried without ceremony. The headstone was simple gray granite, bearing only his name, dates, and the inscription I had chosen. May you find the peace that eluded you in life. I placed a single white rose on the freshly cut grass. No tears came, those had long since dried. Instead, a calm acceptance settled over me. Robert's choices had led him down a path I couldn't follow, couldn't save him from. In the end, he had been as much a victim of his own weaknesses as I had been. Goodbye, Robert, I whispered, turning away from the grave. The ledger is balanced. My phone buzzed as I returned to the car. Detective Powell. Ms. Mitchell, we've arrested Anton Kozlov. Her voice carried the quiet satisfaction of a hunter who has finally cornered elusive prey. He's agreed to testify against Martin Henderson regarding your husband's murder. Anton Kozlov, a name I'd encountered in Eleanor's files, a fixer employed by Martin for delicate problems that required permanent solutions. The final link in the chain of evidence. When? This morning. International operation, coordinated. With Interpol. We found him in Prague. She paused. This means Martin will almost certainly face murder charges in addition to the financial crimes. Your testimony is now more important than ever. After ending the call, I directed my driver to take me to the Blackwood building. The news of Kozlov's arrest had created a strange sense of urgency. Not anxiety, but certainty that the time had come to move forward with plans I'd been considering for weeks. James Harrington was waiting in my office, his expression betraying his curiosity about my sudden request for a meeting. I'd like to establish a trust, I said without preamble. Something separate from the foundation, designed specifically to support families of white-collar crime victims. Harrington's eyebrows rose slightly. A personal project? Yes. Using my recovered funds, plus the proceeds from the sale of my former home. I handed him a folder containing the outline I'd prepared. I want it structured to provide both immediate financial assistance and long-term support, counseling, legal aid, career retraining if necessary. This is quite comprehensive, he noted, scanning the documents. May I ask what prompted this particular timing? They arrested Robert's killer today, or at least the man who carried out Martin's orders. I moved to the window, watching. The city spread out below. It made me realize there are more victims in these stories than we acknowledge. Spouses, children, parents, people who never chose to be part of financial crimes but whose lives are devastated nonetheless. Harrington nodded slowly. I'll have the paperwork drawn up immediately. What will you call this trust? I turned back from the window. The New Beginning Fund. That evening, I returned to Eleanor's estate, my home now, though in my mind it would always carry her presence. Wilson greeted me with his customary quiet efficiency, handing me a small package that had arrived that afternoon. From Ms. Reeves, he explained. She had it delivered personally. In my study, I unwrapped the package to find a beautifully crafted wooden box. Inside lay a letter and what appeared to be old photographs. Diana, as I prepare to begin my role with the foundation, I've been sorting through Robert's belongings that were returned to me after the investigation concluded. Among them, I found these photographs that I believe belonged to you originally. I cannot undo the pain that came into your life through my connection to Robert. I can only hope that returning these small pieces of your past might, in some way, acknowledge the debt that can never truly be repaid. With respect and gratitude for the opportunity to make amends through meaningful work, Claudia. The photographs were from the early years of my marriage to Robert, moments captured in happier times. Robert and I hiking in Vermont, celebrating the purchase of our first home, holidays with friends who had drifted away over the years. I studied the images, expecting pain, but found instead a gentle nostalgia. These memories belonged to a different lifetime, to people we no longer were. I returned them to the box, appreciating Claudia's gesture but recognizing that my focus needed to remain forward, not backward. My phone rang. Catherine again. Diana, have you seen the news? Her voice carried unusual urgency. I reached for the remote, turning on the office television. Breaking news banners scrolled across the screen. Martin Henderson found dead in holding cell, apparent suicide. Details were still emerging, but the initial report indicated Martin had used bed sheets to hang himself shortly after learning of Kozlov's arrest and pending testimony. The board is gathering for an emergency meeting, Catherine continued. This changes the entire landscape of the Henderson case. I'll be there in 30 minutes, I replied, already mentally recalculating the implications. With Martin dead, the criminal case would fragment. Jeffrey Parker and others would still face charges, but the central figure, the architect of the criminal enterprise, was beyond the reach of justice. The civil litigation would continue, but without Martin's testimony, many questions would remain forever unanswered. The board meeting ran late into the night, addressing immediate concerns. How would this affect the ongoing integration of former Henderson assets? What statement should Blackwood release? How would this impact our rehabilitation of Henderson's legitimate business units? By midnight, we had established clear strategies for each issue. I returned home exhausted but clear-headed, finding Wilson still awake, a pot of tea waiting. I thought you might need this, he said, pouring a cup. Ms. Blackwood always found that troubling news required the comfort of proper tea. I accepted the cup gratefully. Martin Henderson is dead. Wilson nodded, his expression revealing nothing. So I heard. Will this complicate matters for Blackwood? Not significantly. The evidence against Henderson Financial is overwhelming, with or without Martin's testimony. I sipped the tea, feeling its warmth spread through me. But it feels incomplete somehow. Justice often does, Wilson observed quietly. Ms. Blackwood once said that true justice was rarely found in courtrooms or public statements. It emerges in how we rebuild what was broken. I carried those words with me into the following days as news of Martin's suicide dominated financial headlines. Speculation ran rampant. Had he acted out of shame, fear of prison, or something darker? Had powerful people ensured his silence? Detective Powell called to inform me that the investigation into Robert's murder would continue despite Martin's death. "We still have Kozlov," she assured me, "and he's talking to save his own skin." The testimony I had prepared against Martin would no longer be needed, but I found myself called to testify in the cases against other Henderson executives. One by one, I faced former colleagues across courtrooms, men and women who had either actively participated in Martin's schemes or looked the other way while collecting the benefits. Jeffrey Parker received a reduced sentence in exchange for his cooperation. Others were not so fortunate. The Henderson empire, built on hubris and deception, crumbled completely under the weight of justice. 3 weeks after Martin's suicide, I received an unexpected visitor at the estate. His widow, Charlotte Henderson. She sat across from me in the garden pavilion, elegant even in grief, her posture rigid with dignity despite the circumstances. We had met occasionally at company functions over the years but had never moved beyond polite small talk. "Thank you for seeing me," she began, her voice steady. "I know this is unusual." "These are unusual times," I replied, studying her face, for signs of hostility but finding only exhaustion. "I wanted to tell you that I didn't know." Her hands tightened around her purse. "About the crimes, the money laundering, any of it. The investigators have confirmed I had no involvement, but I needed you to hear it from me directly." "I believe you, Charlotte," she exhaled slowly. "Martin changed over the years, became harder, more secretive. I told myself it was just the pressure of running a large company." A bitter smile touched her lips. "I suppose we both married men who weren't what they seemed." The comparison startled me with its accuracy. Different circumstances, different scales, but the same fundamental betrayal. "What will you do now?" I asked. "Start over somehow. The house is gone, the account's frozen. I'm staying with my sister until I can find my footing." She met my gaze directly. "I didn't come here asking for help, Diana. I just needed you to know I wasn't part of it." After she left, I made a call to James Harrington. "Add Charlotte Henderson to the New Beginning Fund's first recipients. Full support package, anonymously." "Delivered." "Are you certain?" he asked cautiously. "Given the connection, I'm certain. She's exactly who the fund was created to help." The weeks that followed brought a gradual settling, the financial world adjusting to post-Henderson realities, Blackwood solidifying its position as an industry leader in both performance and ethical standards, the foundation expanding its reach to communities across the country. 6 months to the day after Martin's suicide, I stood on the stage of a university auditorium, preparing to deliver the commencement address to the business school's graduating class. The invitation had come as a surprise. My transformation, from senior financial advisor to corporate leader and philanthropist, had apparently captured the imagination of the academic community. Looking out at the sea of eager faces, young men and women poised to enter the financial world I had navigated. For nearly 2 decades, I set aside my prepared remarks and spoke from the heart. "You've studied balance sheets and profit margins, market trends and investment strategies. These are important tools. But the most important ledger you'll ever balance won't be found in any textbook or quarterly report. It's the ledger of impact, the lives you touch, the communities you strengthen, the changes you bring about through the power that financial knowledge provides. When those of us with financial acumen lose sight of the human equation, we risk creating systems that appear successful on paper while causing immense harm in reality. I learned this lesson the hard way, through betrayal and loss, through watching powerful men destroy lives in pursuit of profit. But I also learned it through witnessing extraordinary generosity and vision from someone who understood that true wealth is measured in positive impact, not just accumulated assets. As you leave here today, I challenge you to consider what success truly means. Is it a number in a bank account? Or is it the knowledge that your work has made the world better, fairer, more hopeful for those who come after you? The choice is yours. Choose wisely. The applause that followed was thunderous, but what moved me more were the thoughtful expressions on many faces, seeds of consideration planted that might one day bloom into a new generation of financial leaders who understood the true meaning of balance. That evening, as I walked through Eleanor's garden, my garden now, though I still thought of it as hers, I felt her presence more strongly than ever. Not as a ghost or a memory, but as a continuing influence, a voice of wisdom still guiding my choices. At the center of the garden stood the chess table where Eleanor had spent countless hours strategizing. I sat down, running my fingers over the carved pieces. The board was set up in mid-game, not the aggressive configuration I had found when I first arrived, but a more subtle, complex position with multiple layers of strategy unfolding. I recognized the setup immediately. It was the game Eleanor and I had played the last time I'd seen her alive, 5 years earlier. She had been winning, as always, but the game had never been finished. A small envelope lay beneath the white queen. Inside, in Wilson's precise handwriting, Ms. Blackwood asked me to set up this game when the time was right. She said you would know what move to make next. I studied the board, seeing the position through fresh eyes. The move I would have made 5 years ago, defensive, protective, was not the move I saw now. Instead, I recognized a bold opportunity to transform the position entirely, sacrificing a piece to gain a superior strategic advantage. With steady fingers, I moved the white bishop across the board, a sacrifice that opened the path for a sequence, leading not just to victory, but to a complete transformation of the game. Your move, Eleanor, I whispered to the evening air, knowing no response would come, yet feeling answered nonetheless. The path ahead was clear now. Not easy, not without challenges, but clear in its purpose and direction. The financial world needed fundamental change, and Blackwood under my leadership would be at the forefront of that evolution. The game wasn't about winning anymore. It was about changing how the game itself was played. And in that transformation lay the true balance I had been seeking all along. 1 year to the day after Eleanor's legacy had fallen into my hands, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of what had once been Martin Henderson's office. The Henderson Financial Building had been acquired in the final phase of Blackwood's strategic expansion, not for its monetary value, but for its symbolic significance. Today, workers were removing the last traces of the Henderson name from the lobby. By evening, the building would officially become the Blackwood Center for Financial Justice, housing both our corporate headquarters and the rapidly expanding foundation. The renovation team needs your final approval on the memorial wall design, Catherine said, joining me at the window. She handed me a tablet displaying renderings of the lobby installation, a wall listing the names of every client and employee who had been harmed by Henderson's collapse, alongside those who had been helped through Blackwood's recovery efforts. It's perfect, I said, returning the tablet. Ensure the craftsmen understand that the victims' names should be most prominent. This isn't about celebrating our rescue. It's about acknowledging what happened here. Catherine nodded, her expression thoughtful. A year ago, I wondered if you were pursuing a vendetta. Now I see you were building a monument to accountability. Perhaps it was both for a time, I admitted. But monuments to vengeance don't stand. Only truth has that kind of foundation. After Catherine left, I continued my solitary tour of the building that had once represented everything wrong with the financial industry. Where Martin's private executive dining room had been, we'd created a community financial education center. His lavish boardroom was being transformed into collaborative workspace for nonprofit partners. Every symbol of excess and exclusivity was being replaced with purpose and accessibility. My phone chimed with a message from James Harrington. Kozlov sentencing complete. 25 years for Robert's murder. No possibility of parole. Justice of a sort. Not the complete justice that Martin's suicide had denied us, but a measure of closure. Robert's killer would spend decades behind bars. The remaining Henderson executives had received sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years for their roles in the financial crimes. The regulatory reforms sparked by the scandal had already changed how several major firms operated, and yet, as I stood in the heart of what had once been my enemy's stronghold, I felt no triumph. Only a quiet certainty that the work of transformation was never truly complete. The elevator chimed, and Wilson stepped out. Though he remained officially in my employ as estate manager, he had gradually taken on a role closer to trusted advisor. "The caterers are asking about final numbers for tonight's gala," he said, his calm demeanor unchanged by the bustling renovation activity around us. The gala, Blackwood's official unveiling of the Center for Financial Justice. 500 guests, including financial leaders, regulatory officials, journalists, and most importantly, recipients of the Foundation's assistance programs. 3 additional seats at the main table, I replied. I've invited Charlotte Henderson and Claudia Reeves to join us. If Wilson was surprised by this decision, he didn't show it. Very good, Ms. Mitchell. And the 3rd seat? For you, Wilson. It's time you stopped standing in the background. A rare smile crossed his face. Ms. Blackwood would approve of your insistence, though she never succeeded in getting me to join her at formal functions. Then I'll have succeeded where even Eleanor failed, I replied, matching his smile. A small victory, but I'll take it. That evening, as I prepared for the gala in what had once been my bedroom in the Greenwich estate, now my permanent home, I found myself reflecting on the journey of the past year. From the devastation of dual betrayals to the unexpected inheritance, from vengeance to purpose, from isolation to a new kind of family formed through shared vision rather than blood. Fastened my grandmother's sapphire around my neck, the blue stone catching the light. Claudia's return of this heirloom had marked a turning point in my healing process, the moment I began to see beyond personal wounds to the larger patterns of harm and healing in the financial world. The gala itself exceeded even my careful planning. The transformed lobby of the former Henderson building glowed with warm lighting, the stark corporate minimalism replaced with living plants, comfortable seating areas, and artistic installations depicting financial concepts in accessible ways. The memorial wall stood as the centerpiece, not hidden away as a reminder of shame, but prominently displayed as a commitment to remembrance and responsibility. I moved through the crowd, greeting board members, foundation recipients, and financial leaders who had once been competitors but were now partners in the new vision of ethical finance that Blackwood championed. Marcus Miller cornered me near the champagne fountain, resplendent in a tuxedo and with his trademark directness intact. "You've created something remarkable here, Diana," he said, gesturing around the transformed space. Eleanor would be speechless. Eleanor was never speechless, I replied with a smile. She'd have a dozen suggestions for improvements. True enough, he chuckled. Speaking of improvements, what's this I hear about you declining the Finance Industry Person of the Year award? That recognition could have amplified your message. I shook my head. The work speaks for itself, Marcus. I don't need a crystal trophy to validate it. He eyed me speculatively. The old Diana would have seen the strategic advantage of such recognition. The old Diana was still playing a game with rules written by others. I'm more interested in changing the rules. His booming laugh drew glances from nearby guests. That's exactly what Eleanor used to say. Different words, same steel spine. His expression softened. I'm proud of you, kid. Not many could have turned what happened to you into this. He gestured expansively at the transformed space. Before I could respond, Alexis appeared at my elbow. Though still technically my security driver, she had evolved into something closer to a chief of staff, managing the increasingly complex intersection of my corporate and philanthropic responsibilities. Ms. Mitchell, the program begins in 5 minutes, and there's someone asking to speak with you privately. Says it's urgent. She discreetly indicated a corner of the room where a slender woman waited, partially concealed by a decorative pillar. I excused myself from Marcus and made my way through the crowd. As I approached, the woman turned, and I found myself face to face with Susan Henderson, Martin's sister, whom I'd met briefly at company events years earlier. "Ms. Mitchell," she began, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "Thank you for seeing me. I wasn't sure I'd be welcome tonight." "Everyone affected by Henderson's actions is welcome here," I replied carefully. "That includes the Henderson family." Susan nodded, her gaze darting around the transformed space. "It's not what I expected. When I heard Blackwood had acquired the building, I assumed you'd erase every trace of my brother's company. Make it a monument to your victory." "This isn't about victory," I said. "It's about transformation, about acknowledging what happened and creating something better from the ruins. That's why I came tonight." She took a deep breath. "I've been managing what's left of our family foundation. After what happened, most of the board resigned. The remaining funds are modest, but still significant." She met my eyes directly. "I'd like to contribute them to your new beginning fund, for families affected by white-collar crime." The irony wasn't lost on either of us, Henderson money being used to heal wounds that Henderson actions had created. But in that irony lay a perfect symmetry, a completion of a circle that had begun with betrayal and might now end with healing. "The fund would welcome your contribution," I said, "but I'd suggest something more meaningful. Join our advisory board, bring your perspective to the work, help ensure that other families don't experience what yours has." Surprise flickered across her face. "You'd want a Henderson involved? After everything?" "Names are just labels, Susan. What matters is the work we choose to do moving forward." Our conversation was interrupted by the chiming of glass, the signal that the formal program was beginning. I excused myself to take my place at the podium, surveying the gathered crowd with a sense of quiet certainty. 1 year ago, I began. I stood in a different building, facing the ruins of what I thought was my life. Today, we stand together in a building that once represented the worst of financial excess, now transformed into a center for justice, education, and healing. The crowd quieted, even the servers pausing to listen. The financial industry has always operated on a simple premise: the balance sheet must add up. Assets must equal liabilities plus equity. Numbers must align with absolute precision. I paused, looking out at faces that had spent careers fixated on those numbers. But there's another balance sheet that has been ignored for too long: the human impact of our financial decisions. The lives affected, communities transformed, futures either nurtured or destroyed by how we choose to wield financial power. I gestured to the memorial wall, illuminated by subtle lighting. Every name on this wall represents a life touched by financial decisions made in this very building. Some were harmed when those decisions prioritized profit over people. Others were helped when we chose a different path. Each name is a reminder that finance is never just about numbers, it's about people. The room was completely silent now, hundreds of financial leaders confronted with the human consequences of an industry that often preferred abstraction to reality. The Blackwood Center for Financial Justice exists to rewrite that balance sheet, to ensure that profit and purpose align, to demonstrate that ethical finance isn't just morally necessary, it's economically superior. As I continued outlining the center's mission and programs, I noticed Charlotte Henderson and Claudia Reeves sitting side by side at the main table. Two women who had lost everything through the actions of men they had trusted, now finding new purpose in the aftermath of betrayal. Next to them sat Wilson, still maintaining his perfect posture but allowing himself to be fully present in a way Eleanor had never managed to convince him to be. And scattered throughout the crowd were the faces of those who had received assistance through the foundation, former Henderson employees rebuilding careers, clients who had nearly lost everything, families finding stability after financial abuse. Their presence grounded the elegant event in tangible reality, the true measure of our work. After concluding my remarks and opening the center with a ceremonial cutting of blue ribbon, I found myself drawn to a quiet alcove that had once been Martin's private retreat. The space had been transformed into a small meditation room with a simple fountain and comfortable seating. Quite the transformation, came a familiar voice from the doorway. I turned to find Jeffrey Parker standing there, visibly thinner after months in federal custody but still recognizable. His cooperation with authorities had earned him a reduced sentence and apparently temporary release for this event. Jeffrey, I acknowledged, neither warm nor cold. I didn't realize you were on the guest list. Special arrangement with the prosecutor's office. Part of my ongoing cooperation. He stepped further into the room, his gaze taking in the dramatic changes. You've created something remarkable here, Diana. Something I never imagined possible. When I was helping Martin run this place into the ground, people can change. Buildings too, apparently. Some people, he agreed quietly. Others just get what they deserve. He studied me with new respect in his eyes. I underestimated you. We all did. Martin thought you were just another disposable employee. I thought you were just another ambitious woman who'd hit the glass ceiling. We never saw this. That was your limitation, not mine. He nodded, accepting the rebuke. I'm testifying in the final cases next week. After that, back to minimum. Security for another 4 years. He hesitated. I've been thinking a lot about what happens after that. About making amends somehow. The center will still be here when you're released, I said, surprising myself with the offer implicit in my words. Financial expertise applied to healing rather than harm is always valuable. A tentative smile touched his face, not the confident smirk I remembered from Henderson, but something more genuine. I'd like that. As Jeffrey was escorted back to his security detail, Catherine found me in the alcove. The Japanese financial delegation is particularly interested in our transparency protocols, she reported. They're suggesting a possible partnership to implement similar standards in Tokyo. Set up a meeting for next week, I replied, and make sure our translation team has the technical vocabulary for financial ethics in Japanese. Catherine made a note, then fixed me with her perceptive gaze. A year ago? Did you ever imagine this is where we'd end up? International partnerships? Industry-wide reforms? A center dedicated to financial justice? I considered the question seriously. No. A year ago, I wanted justice for myself, perhaps even vengeance. I couldn't see beyond that immediate pain. I looked out at the gala in full swing, lives intersecting in ways I could never have predicted. Eleanor saw further. She knew that personal justice was just the beginning. Later that night, after the last guests had departed and the building stood quiet, I made my way back to what had once been Martin's office, now the heart of the center's operations. The space had been completely redesigned, the imposing desk replaced with a circular work table, the walls of awards replaced with images of communities supported by the foundation. In the center of the work table sat a simple chessboard, not Eleanor's antique set, but a modern, clean-lined version I had specially commissioned for this space. The pieces were arranged in the same position as the game in Eleanor's garden, the position after my transformative bishop sacrifice. I moved a black pawn forward, taking on Eleanor's role in our unfinished game, creating a new challenge for my white pieces to overcome. The move was strategic, thoughtful, exactly what she would have done. "Your move," I whispered to myself, studying the new configuration. My phone chimed with a message from Alexis. "Security sweep complete. Building secure. The Henderson name has been completely removed from all signage and documentation. Blackwood Center for Financial Justice now official." I sent a quick acknowledgement, then returned my attention to the chess game. The black pawns. Advance had created a new vulnerability in my position, requiring a strategic adjustment. Just as in real life, no single move guaranteed victory. The game required constant adaptation, foresight, and occasional sacrifice. With deliberate care, I advanced a white knight. Not the most obvious move, but one that opened multiple pathways forward while protecting my core position. Outside the windows, the city glowed in the darkness, thousands of lives intersecting in complex patterns of need and opportunity, harm and healing. Somewhere in that urban tapestry, Robert's grave lay quiet under the stars. Martin's legacy crumbled, further with each passing day. And Eleanor's vision expanded through my hands, growing into something neither of us could have fully imagined. I made one final move on the chessboard before preparing to leave, advancing a pawn that had remained in its starting position throughout the game. A small piece, often overlooked, now moving steadily forward toward transformation. In chess, a pawn that reaches the opposite side of the board can become any piece the player chooses, usually a queen, the most powerful piece in the game. This particular pawn was still 7 moves from transformation, but its journey had begun, and its path was clear. As I switched off the lights in the office that had once belonged to the man who'd discarded me as worthless, I felt neither triumph nor resentment, only a profound sense of purpose. The balance sheet of my life no longer carried Robert or Martin as liabilities. They had been written off, their accounts closed. What remained were the assets, the lives touched, the systems changed, the foundation built for something that would outlast any personal victory. Outside, my driver waited to take me home to Eleanor's estate, my home now in every sense. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, regulatory meetings, foundation initiatives, international partnerships. The work of transformation was never truly complete. But tonight, as the car pulled away from the building that now bore the Blackwood name instead of Henderson's, I allowed myself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Not for having won a game of vengeance, but for having changed the game entirely. The most powerful move in chess isn't checkmate, it's transforming a pawn into a queen, taking the most humble piece and revealing its hidden potential. Eleanor had done that for me. Now I was doing it for others, and in that transformation lay the true balance I had been seeking all along. 5 years passed like the turning of seasons, each one bringing growth, change, and deeper roots for what we had built. The Blackwood Center for Financial Justice had expanded beyond my most ambitious visions, with satellite offices in 7 countries and a staff of over 300. The model we'd created had been adopted by financial regulatory bodies worldwide. Universities taught case studies based on our transformation of the industry. Former Henderson employees now led departments dedicated to ethical financial practices. On this particular morning, the 5th anniversary of the center's opening, I sat in Eleanor's garden with a cup of tea, watching dawn light filter through the trees. The estate remained largely unchanged, a sanctuary amid constant evolution elsewhere in my life. Wilson appeared on the garden path, his pace slightly slower now, but his bearing as dignified as ever. "Your guests have begun to arrive, Ms. Mitchell," he announced. "The first shuttle from the airport has reached the main house. Today marked not just the center's anniversary, but the launch of the Eleanor Blackwood Institute, an international training academy for financial ethics and responsible wealth management. Financial leaders from 23 countries would gather at the estate for the inaugural symposium." "Thank you, Wilson. I'll be there shortly." He hesitated, then added, "There was a delivery this morning. I've placed it in your study." In the study, I found a small package wrapped in simple brown paper. No return address, only my name in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a wooden box containing a queen chess piece, not elegant like Eleanor's set or modern like the one in Dye. My office, but a simple handmade piece carved from dark wood. A note accompanied it. 5 years ago, you gave me a second chance when no one else would. Today, I completed my sentence. The man who entered prison is not the man who leaves it. This queen piece, the first thing I learned to carve during rehabilitation, is a small token of my gratitude. Jeffrey Parker, I placed the piece on my chessboard, replacing the white queen that had led my strategy for so long. Sometimes transformation comes from unexpected sources. The symposium unfolded throughout the day, presentations, panel discussions, and collaborative workshops filling the estate with energy and purpose. Notable among the participants was Claudia Reeves, now the Foundation's Director of Outreach, whose program for detecting financial abuse had become a global standard. Beside her sat Susan Henderson, whose insights into the psychology of financial criminals had proven invaluable in creating preventative systems. During a brief break, I retreated to Eleanor's sanctuary, my sanctuary now, though I still thought of it as hers. The leather-bound journal had expanded to multiple volumes, each documenting lives changed and systems transformed. I had added a new installation, a wall of photographs showing the faces of every person who had found new beginnings through our work. My phone chimed with a news alert. The final Henderson executive had been released from prison after serving his sentence. The Henderson chapter was officially closed. As evening approached and guests gathered for the culminating dinner, I stepped away for a moment of solitude on the terrace. The setting sun cast long shadows across the garden where Eleanor had once mapped her strategies and where I now planned mine. Catherine found me there, her role having evolved from board member to trusted deputy and friend. "Quite a legacy you've built," she said, handing me a glass of champagne. "Eleanor would be proud." "It's her legacy, too," I replied. "And Robert's, in a way, and Martin's. All the broken pieces that somehow formed a foundation." Speaking of foundations, Catherine said, "The nomination committee has voted unanimously. The Financial Ethics Global Award will be renamed the Diana Mitchell Award for Transformative Leadership." I shook my head, smiling. I told them no personal recognition. "This isn't about recognition," she countered. "It's about inspiration. Future generations should know this all began with one woman who refused to be defeated by betrayal, who transformed personal loss into global change." As we rejoined the gathering, I found myself at the head of a table surrounded by faces from every chapter of this unexpected journey. Colleagues and competitors, victims and reformers, all now united in a shared vision of what finance could become. I raised my glass, the room quieting in anticipation, to Eleanor Blackwood, who saw potential where others saw only brokenness, to second chances and new beginnings, and to the understanding that true wealth is measured not by what we accumulate, but by what we transform. Later that night, after the guests had departed for their hotels and the estate stood quiet under starlight, I returned to my study. The chessboard waited, the hand-carved queen standing among pieces that had witnessed my entire journey. I made one final move, not advancing any piece, but simply turning the board 90 degrees, changing the perspective entirely. From this new angle, the game looked completely different, revealing strategies and possibilities invisible from the original view. This was the final lesson. Sometimes the most powerful move isn't advancing or capturing, but shifting your perspective to see the entire board anew. I closed the leather-bound journal containing 5 years of transformed lives and opened a fresh one, its pages blank and waiting. On the first page, I wrote, "The balance sheet of a life is measured not by what was taken from us, but by what we create from what remains. Every ending is simply a foundation for what comes next." Diana Mitchell. 5 years after the beginning, Outside my window, the city glowed with a million lights. Million stories unfolding, some in triumph, some in tragedy. Within each lay the potential for transformation. My own story had evolved from victim to victor to something far more meaningful. Architect of change, guardian of balance, keeper of Eleanor's flame. The game continued, and I played on, no longer. Bound by rules written by others, but creating a new game entirely. One where everyone had the opportunity to transform from pawn to queen. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.